This is Amy Keuper with Initial Call, and Initial Call sponsored the NBIA, that's the National Business Incubation Association conference that was in Atlanta in May of 2012. And we led a workshop session there on helping entrepreneurs have a sales mindset. And for anyone not able to attend the event or those wanting to revisit the content, I'm recording this session. Now, we at Initial Call have been helping companies grow and sell their products and services for 10 years now. So we have a great deal of experience in helping companies overcome sales challenges. And the purpose of the NBIA event was to encourage and provide resources for business incubators helping their clients, helping their startup companies to grow and overcome obstacles. So we together discussed some of the sales challenges that all companies have, but young companies in particular. And then I presented 3 practical ways that coaches and business advisors can help their clients to begin thinking from a sales perspective earlier in their company life cycle. Now, we felt it was important to establish some common ground around this topic despite the varied backgrounds of the audience. Some incubators were from high-tech environments and deal primarily with scientists and engineers, and other incubators work with very small businesses in a rural setting and have clients who have a very straightforward consumer product. And it is sometimes common to find those extremes of the type of client companies even under one incubator roof. But regardless of the type of company, the sales challenges are common. And so we together, began to discuss some of these. Being an entrepreneur is very, very tough. And where there is a great idea or a great product, there may not be a great company just yet. Entrepreneurs are naturally very excited about their business, and often they get so focused on the operations and on the development side of their work that they aren't thinking about how they will grow their company. They're working in their business and not on their business. Now, of course, they know that they will need to gain customers, but it's typically not first in their minds at all. It's very common for them to delay thoughts about selling their product, about selling their service, and about growing their company in terms of revenue until everything is built. They think, I'm going to build it, and then I'm going to sell it being their product or their service. So they're approaching their business, but from an engineer's mindset, a designer's mindset, from a chef's mindset, or from that software developer's mindset. And they're not thinking from a sales mindset. And I'm not talking about selling their company. That may be a goal they have, but they have to actually sell some products or services first to prove that the market is responding to their company before they will be acquirable. Now, your clients may think that sales will come later for them automatically just because it's later. And they might be thinking this because they're simply consumed with the urgent tasks of developing their company and launching their company. And they haven't devoted any real thought or time to the concept of sales. They might be new to this entrepreneurial world. This may be their first venture. And if they've never been in a sales role, they literally may not know what's involved in winning new business. I think they may also believe this common myth that if they build it, the buyers will come. And it is so easy to believe this myth because when we observe other companies in operation, it appears as if everything is very easy for them. We may see someone being profiled on a program and they're condensing their life story to something like, well, I just started in my garage building these, and then all my neighbors had to have one, and then I went national, and here I am a billionaire. Now that may be the condensed true version, but they may be compressing decades of effort and making it sound like all of that growth happened without them even trying. When we see a feature in a publication, we might think that the company that's being featured was so interesting that the reporter sought them out. But in reality, most of the time, a PR person worked very intently and at great expense potentially to create that kind of exposure. And today, with the internet, we see things that appear to go viral and just automatically spread. And that too often is quite orchestrated. So, a few of us may be so fortunate that our businesses will simply take off despite anything that we do. But in the real world, even when a product or a service is great, companies have to work to generate demand. And it's very possible that your clients, if you help incubate clients or advise clients at all, it's possible they don't realize how hard it will be to create demand because they have not yet tried to, and they haven't done any prospecting outside of their insulated network bubble. Okay, so they may have some beta users or some early customers, but and these sales did occur for them very easily. I joke that their grandmother bought one and their college roommate bought one, and so far everyone is responding favorably, and they haven't had to try very hard, and they've not yet approached that cold, cruel world. So your client may just be thinking that additional sales will come as easily as these beta clients have if they've had that experience of selling to their personal network. Okay, so we worked as a group in small groups, subgroups to sort of unpack this, and we heard some various responses from lots of people throughout the country who just basically verified that this is very true for their clientele. And they summarized some of these points in small groups, and then we bubbled up this content for the larger group. One person mentioned that sales or thinking about selling the product was not even in the list of top 12 things her clients think about. So basically, as a group, we confirmed that the growing pains are real and that many startups do struggle when it comes to thinking about sales for their product or service. And I condensed the various challenges we listed into 5 major groups or pain points. So the first problem that startups have or entrepreneurs have is that they have little to no time. They may have other work they are doing to support their side venture, and even if they don't have to split their attention in this way, running a startup is all consuming. Your owners have to deal with the urgent things and are not able to carve out time to do more strategic planning. They're handling crises and putting out fires. It's just a reality. There's so much to do. Another huge challenge that young companies have is that they often don't have any consolidated records. What I mean is they don't have any shared information. Other than perhaps an accounting system like QuickBooks, which is holding information only on customers, there's no common Rolodex. All right, so you have a sole proprietor perhaps who has various customer and prospect information, maybe on a phone, maybe on a desktop computer, maybe on a home computer, maybe literally on paper. And if we multiply that across a core leadership team, each person is operating in a silo with their information scattered everywhere. So the CEO, the founder, cannot easily see how many clients the company has or how many prospects the company has. The CEO cannot see how many deals are in the works. Nor can that founder see what anyone else is doing in terms of their activities or tasks. And any sales that are happening in a very haphazard way with extremely low visibility. Along that same concept, young companies often have no real sales plan or sales process. Your client's only strategy may be hope at this point, or just that expectation that it will all occur automatically later. If your client does have a sales plan, it's likely very one-dimensional. And what I've observed is that it's very common for this founder to have some key industry contacts, deep knowledge. That's why they've launched this venture. They're seeing a need, they're meeting it, but they're leaning heavily on their existing relationships and their current small network. and beta users, and they're thinking that their early client work will be so successful that other work will simply flow in automatically. And it is wonderful, and that is a real sales channel if those early users can be evangelists, for the offering and bring in other deals. But we can't rely on our clients to be our sales force. And so we have to help our founders, our entrepreneurs, think about how they will win business when they venture outside of their current network bubble. They are going to have to potentially buy a prospect list. And even to do that, they'll have to identify where to target in terms of geography, in terms of revenue, in terms of industry, and so on. But remember, any early sales that are occurring are happening somewhat organically because of your client's existing connections. But that ends. That's not a replicable process. That CEO or founder may have a very magnetic personality and be a natural salesperson, but even if he or she is, they cannot continue forever to do everything themselves. So with no documented process about what they do to win business, the road isn't clear so that someone can come behind them and be successful in that if they ever give up the direct selling. So we do see young companies really have no formal sales plan, no outline sales process at all. And this is a very real and common struggle. Often they're alone, right? You may have a sole proprietor founder or one with a very skeleton crew core staff, but startups are usually struggling for manpower, which compounds all of the problems we've listed. And of course, they're probably underfunded and trying to accomplish a whole lot with very little capital. All right, so with these challenges in mind, there are three things that we, as uh, those who provide services and encouragement and advice and incubation to young companies, there's three things that we can do to help them be thinking about selling their product, selling their service from day one. And remember, their default position is to think, I'm going to get this completely built. I'm going to get my business all organized, all developed, and then I'm going to think about sales. And we're challenging them to have a paradigm shift to begin thinking about their sales message from day one. So they need to begin to develop some value proposition messaging early. They need to implement a database early, and they need to outline or map their sales stages early. And these are things that we can encourage them to do. So I'll be speaking to you in ways that you can then work to challenge your clients. So your client is thinking, I'm going to build my product first, then sell it. But we can ask them key questions that get them thinking about sales positioning from the very beginning. This is critical because our client's natural tendency is to talk about the features of their product or service instead of the value provided by their product or service from their prospect's perspective. Let me say that again. A founder's natural tendency is to talk about the features of their product or service without presenting the value from the prospect's perspective. So when it's their baby, when it's something they've created, they want to list the features and then presume that their audience will be able to deduce the value from the list of features itself. And we need to move our clients past this kind of thinking because prospects don't really care as much about features or specifics as they do what difference it will make for them. So there's some key questions that we can ask early. And so our founders become very versed in talking about their product or service from a value perspective, and it becomes a natural thing for them and they get comfortable giving their value proposition. All right, so we want to challenge our entrepreneurs and ask them, what pains do you eliminate or reduce? What do your buyers want to avoid? And what do your buyers want to gain? Now, this is where it can be easy to throw up some very broad sounding value propositions, something like clients want good customer service. And that's true, but it's too vague. Let's say that your client has a telecom solution that connects customers needing help with a support team with zero downtime. So, what your client should move to articulating, instead of saying something like clients want good customer service, your entrepreneur should be able to say something like clients want their technical support calls answered the first time they dial without being put on hold or having to leave a message. All right, so when they approach a business with that kind of message, their prospect can envision the difference it will make in terms of their attrition in the phone queue and their customer satisfaction and problem resolution and so on. So what buyers want to avoid is this being put on hold when you call for help. And if your client has a telecom solution, for example, that addresses that, when they can clearly articulate some very specific value from the buyer's perspective, that's where you really have a hook in terms of a value proposition. All right, another question that you want to ask your clients, your entrepreneurs, is how do you make it easy? Ease is such a universally attractive benefit. And so if your client can fill in the blank in this sentence, they have an instant value proposition. They should be able to say, we make it easier for companies to dot dot dot, fill in the blank. We make it easier for companies to what? And then when they can fill in that blank, they have one value proposition statement that will work for them. Now, another huge value is being able to reduce expenses. So your client, if it's applicable to their type of business, whenever that possible, if they can explain how they reduce expenses for such and such, or prevent increases in, or minimize the number of so and so, or help clients pay less for, help control the costs of, or help prevent this is where they really are speaking to the bottom line, and that kind of message will be head turning for a great deal of their potential audience. All right, so if it's applicable, your client should be able to articulate how they cut costs or provide additional value in terms of the ROI picture for buyers. Okay, another question is, how are you different? Think about it. Lots of companies sell the same thing, but some companies thrive and others die and go out of business. You don't have to have a completely unique product or a completely unique service to be successful. You have to be able to differentiate yourself. Frank Perdue is the founder of Perdue Farms. They process poultry, and he says if you can differentiate a dead chicken, you can differentiate anything. And I love that quote because it's so true. We may go to the market and choose one good over another because we believe one is more healthy, it's organic versus non-organic, it's fresher, etc. So that's really where our clients need to learn to say, what sets us apart is dot dot dot. What sets us apart is, or something you'll get from us and no one else is, and then fill in the blank. All right, and another thing that you can really help your entrepreneurs do is to begin to be able to summarize and capture what value they provided for others. They have any beta clients, at a very minimum, they should be doing a little one-page write-up on the client and the challenge that existed, what they did for the client or sold to the client, and then what difference that made. And if there's a way to capture some kind of numeric metric around that or numbers around that, that's huge. Later, those stories can be written up or graphically designed, and those are your collateral pieces, your leave behinds. That even if you don't ever formally write them up, you really want to have quantifiable stories to tell about the work you've done for others. When you can name drop, it's fantastic, and it's very, very compelling. People like to see that you've been successful doing it for others, and that becomes a big part of your story. All right, so what we want to do is every time we meet with a client, even if it's just a peripheral part of our agenda, ask one of these questions. And it's like it's practice for your entrepreneur to be able to answer these questions and be comfortable, because they're really giving their pitch and they need to do it over and over and over again. And they need to develop various messages. They probably don't have just one value point or one way that they can help prospects. So they need to have a whole, I guess, arsenal of responses to these questions that are natural for them. And it will help turn almost anyone into a natural salesperson when they can answer these questions. And you can be a part of coaching them to think this way and think from their buyer's perspective early on. All right, so that's really step one. Okay, now you may have heard the it's almost a joke, but I mean, when is the best time to plant an oak tree? The best time is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. And I believe the same thing holds true for implementing a database to capture all business and all sales data. Your clients may think that they aren't ready for this step or they don't need it yet, but putting a database in place will never be easier than it is today. And if they start early, the database can grow with your client's company, and later they won't be faced with the daunting task of trying to import all their information from years past or migrate over thousands of records. And I think more importantly than just this ease factor, the fact that it's easier now than it will be later, more importantly, you're helping to set a foundation for database decisions. Entrepreneurs are sort of notorious for going on intuition, and intuition is fine to a point, but in the end, data trumps gut. All right. Your client CEOs and leadership teams, they're vital to your client success, and they need to be focused on the highest level tasks possible and be able to visualize that information and really be metrics driven. And when things are not captured, they may have a sense of what's working or not, or a sense of things that actually may be inaccurate. So a database is tremendous for them. A database that contains all contacts and all accounts in a shared and easily accessible solution addresses every single one of the entrepreneur challenges that we listed earlier. Right? Your entrepreneurs are stressed for time. And adopting a database does require an initial investment of time. But after that, it saves time, right? There's no more looking for phone numbers or fumbling around to remember what happened in a prior call with a prospect. Um, CEOs are often sort of multitasking and doing every job, and some of the things they are doing may be able to be offloaded to an admin, and a database facilitates that transfer of duties. And so a database addresses the time problem after, admittedly, a small effort at implementing. All right, remember how young companies struggle with visibility. A database provides visibility. It allows your client to see the entire business landscape and the entire sales landscape in one place. Remember that startups often have no real sales plan, and the database is the means to formalizing a sales plan and outlining a sales process, because it's a way to track what it takes to convert someone from being a stranger into a paying client. And then this process, once it's documented, becomes replicable, and that's the only way for a company to grow, to bring in new people who can do jobs formerly done by someone else. But when how they did it is fully outlined and documented, that process can be improved and tweaked and then copied by others. So to that point, remember, entrepreneurs struggle for manpower and struggle for help. So that database is the means for expansion. As people join the company, they can be added as a user to the database and then supervised and supported, from the database. It gives a way to really support them and, frankly, watch what they're doing on your behalf. And of course, there's the money problem. And the database gives your client a much better shot at getting any kind of external funding, because they'll have real metrics to track and they can share those numbers with the bank, with the angel investors, with the equity, partners. So a database addresses all of the issues we listed earlier that businesses have. Now, some acronyms commonly used when referring to databases are CRM or SFA. CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management, and SFA stands for Salesforce Automation. Now, CRM or SFA databases are designed to be an electronic Rolodex, as well as a system for managing the sales process. It can be broader than that, but that's the starting point. Now, there are many options, many database solutions to choose from. There's a website called insidecrm.com that may help with comparison shopping. But I would say that if your client is avoiding this because they're worried about cost, there are very affordable options for small companies. Zoho allows up to 3 users completely free. And Salesforce.com is very affordable for any company who has 5 or fewer users. They can have a group edition, which would be about $1,500 a year total price. So there really isn't a monetary reason to shy away from this at this point. I would encourage you to encourage your clients to investigate that. And I want to look at a couple of screenshots to show you what a database can really do for your young client. What I have here is an example of an account record. This is a company record. This would be the record of a company you're trying to sell to. And this company is noted as a prospect. And there are standard fields in Salesforce built to hold the kinds of information you would expect to capture, the company website, the phone number, the number of employees, and so on. But what's so fantastic is that you can add sections and add fields to hold information that's relevant for your sale. Once Initial Call worked for a solar energy company, and they cared about capturing the roof square footage of their prospect accounts. And they also wanted to capture the utility tariff classification of their prospect accounts. And then think about it. Once this information's in your database, you can sort by these, you can group by these factors. So you have tremendous reporting power once you have the information captured and visible in a nice, clean way. So you have the ability to capture all of the companies you're trying to sell to. And then, of course, you want to capture all of the individuals that work at that company you're prospecting. Salesforce has also done something new in terms of integrating social media. And so this is a sample contact record pulled from Salesforce.com. Mark Benioff is the Salesforce CEO. And you can see that not only do we have the ability to put in the contact's name and even birthday, assistant name, phone numbers, etc., we can even pull in the LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook profiles of our prospects and learn a lot about them personally and leverage that. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but some of this social media wave is really here to stay, and a tool like a CRM database gives you the ability to easily integrate those kind of new tools that are available to us in sales and be more successful in sales by leveraging them. So that's an example of a screenshot for a contact record. Now, you've got companies you're trying to sell to, you have contact records, and all what you'll be doing is you'll be making phone calls and emails and doing the prospecting work, having the meetings and so on. And so with a database, you're able to track activity records and tie that into the accounts and see, time and date that things were done and summarize, and then drill into these records more specifically to read more detailed notes. So what this enables me to do, if I'm the founder, for example, is actually just by clicking here and there quickly, I can see what my sales rep has done on my behalf or what my partner is doing. And this cuts down on the time on the just the verbal exchange or some of the flood of email back and forth when I can see things documented. Plus, it's common for people to move in and out of companies. And when information is stored here in a common database versus an email system, it's captured here for all time. Too often we manage our sales processes out of an email system, which is fine as long as that email is active and as long as that person is still with the company and so on. But just having their tasks and emails live within their Outlook account, let's say, is limiting because the visibility of others is limited to it. And if that account is ever shut down, then a lot of things are potentially lost. or they're just difficult to mine out. Okay, so a database gives a common repository where anyone else in the company can see what's come before in terms of dealing with this client. So if it's handed off to a delivery team, they can see everything that led up to the sale and so on. All right, so all of these conversations with accounts and contacts are intended to lead towards opportunities. And so with a database that's designed to manage the sales process, I can capture my potential opportunities, my live deals, and I can track them through sales stages, and I can note when I believe I will get ink or get a signature on a deal, and I can note the dollar amount. And so this again is just it's the whole goal of really implementing something like this is to get a better handle on potential deals. We'll talk more about that shortly. Now, I have a key tip. When you implement a database, it's common to think of only putting in your prospects and maybe your current customers into your database. But if you'll be honest and think this through, there are many parties that you need to track and keep up with, many types of companies and individuals that are involved in you operating your business. So I would suggest that you go beyond adding just prospects and customers and put everything in your database. And I mean all of your partners who help you deliver deals or bring you deals, all of your vendors and suppliers that you buy from, all of your employees. And then uh, you'll have another category, even potentially for former clients or former customers. So in this diagram on the screen, you are in the middle. This is you. And your database contains information about every single one account and individual that you contact or may contact in the course of doing business. So broaden your paradigm to think about capturing not just prospect and customer info in your database, but your vendor information, your partner information, your employee information. And when you note what every person's relationship is to you, and that's what these arrows represent, each arrow represents vendor, partner, customer, former customer, maybe even something like government official. Um, you have all your information in one safe place. And that gives you the ability to see, maybe for the first time, your entire Rolodex and how many of each type of relationship you have. Let's just say, for simplicity's sake, that this is my Rolodex. I'm a small company and I have 100 total records. I have 100 total accounts. Well, 60 of those are prospects for me. 5 are in hot pink here. They're my vendors that I buy from. I have 3 partners who bring me deals. I have 15 current clients. I have 10 former clients, 10 beta customers who didn't go live or didn't renew. And then I have 7 disqualified prospects, meaning those are objectively disqualified and they can never be my client. I don't recommend that you disqualify any prospect on interest or budget because those are variables that can change with time. But let's just say that I only ever sell to US based companies and someone sneaks into my database who's based overseas. So that might be in the red here. That would be a company that I don't mind having in my database and I may still want to communicate with them, but they are to me never going to be a prospect, so I have them marked as disqualified. At a glance, I can just for the first time ever, just get a sense of all of my world and what that looks like. And this is very, very important because what a database will do, it will make marketing and communicating with your prospects and customers and vendors and partners, it will make marketing much easier for you and much more affordable earlier in the company life cycle than you may have dreamed. Because once you can sort everyone in your database according to their relationship to you, then you can, with just a third-party mass email solution, communicate with each of those groups distinctively and very, very affordably. A lot of people can't do email marketing because they don't have any data aggregated even into a spreadsheet. And a database, solves that problem completely. And what's even better is that instead of just blasting everyone you know with one message, you can isolate your segments of the population like we have here, and you can avoid sending your current clients the sign up now message or the coupon. right? So they would be excluded from the sign up now blast. And your former customers, you can isolate and send them a come back or try us again kind of message. And your partners don't have to get bombarded with anything related to sales, but can have a message tailored to them or even a thank you for being such a great partner type message. And let's say you want to isolate a group and send them a special maybe holiday message or gift. You're able to finally do that very quickly by sorting on an account or contacts relationship to you. So that's just absolutely tremendous. All right, so a quick review. What we established in step one is that whether they want to or not, or believe they are or not, your founders are selling from day one, and they need to be honing their pitch from day one and not waiting until later to think about how they're going to take their product or service to market. And so we want to be encouraging them in that and helping them be comfortable with the idea that really they're selling their product and service early, and they need to be prepared to do that outside of their network bubble. And step two is for our clients to adopt some kind of customer relationship management, some kind of CRM or Salesforce automation database so that they can see their whole Rolodex, so to speak, have it safe and secure, and have the foundation for growing their company and solving all of those challenges that we listed that young companies have. All right, with these two things in place, we're ready to do step three. And this is to work with your entrepreneurs to outline the steps that it takes them to convert a prospect into a paying customer. This doesn't just happen. There are distinct activities that must transpire to take a stranger and convert them into someone giving you money, right? So here is a list of some example, what are called sales stages or sales steps. Now, I know that each companies will be a little bit different, and they should be different and unique. But a common first step is making some kind of pitch or formal presentation. And then the prospect may have to go away and review that for some length of time. And then maybe they're interested and there's some kind of formal quote or proposal pushed out. And then maybe there's some back and forth negotiations on it. And then a contract is issued and the deal is won or lost. I mean, that should be ringing a bell. But these are actually defined sales stages or sales steps involved in securing new clients. Now, if I were to center this list and add some diagonal lines on either side, I would begin to get what we may recognize as the classic funnel shape here. That term, the sales funnel, comes from this very list of stages. Now, again, let's keep in mind that your clients need to customize the list for their own business. What steps are unique to your client's business? Maybe they go for a site visit to scope work if they provide some kind of contracting or architectural service. Maybe they provide a free sample of their food product or their consumer product. Maybe they do a product demo if they have a software or some kind of service. So whatever their first stage is, they should put it in and put it in wherever in the list it belongs. Maybe after the prospect does some internal review, there's always a larger group presentation. Okay, put that in. And maybe contracts must always go out for a legal review. So maybe that's a step your client has. It doesn't matter what the step is. The steps should be something objective. These are not about feelings or a perception. It's an actual stage or a literal objective step from moving from one point in the sales process to another. And so these are defined objectively. And this is the sales funnel. The clients begin conversations with a certain volume of prospects, and then some drop out at any of those stages along the way. And in the end, we have some net sales. Okay, regarding opportunities, the series of stage labels end up becoming your client's sales funnel. Okay, and the number of colors here or steps in the funnel will depend on, your client's particular business. The best funnel in the world has only two stages. You meet with someone and they pay you. They buy immediately. But most of us have, we would love to have that, right? But most of us have a few more steps involved in closing deals. But and so here, kind of in the green box on the right, I have just the five, again, most basic sales stages. Some kind of presentation, maybe some kind of quote or formal proposal, some back and forth, and then a contract issued for a deal, and the deal is closed won or closed lost. So whatever the steps are for your client, they'll want to use their database to learn what those are and define those. They really do need to know what their steps are, and this gives them tremendous power for some key business tasks. First, your entrepreneur can train others to sell, because once a process is documented, they now have a replicable process that someone else can follow. So even if your entrepreneur is that natural salesperson, charismatic, magnetic personality, if we can force them to list what do they really do when it gets down, when you get past the charm, what are they really doing in terms of moving someone forward to buying, then we'll list those steps, and then others will be able to replicate those steps. That's how they can grow, to get others to do the sales work that they're doing themselves. Secondly, our clients can better control the sales cycle because they know what's next. And this translates to a better win ratio. When I know that I make a presentation, rather than letting my prospect vanish into the ether, I might say, now I'll write up everything we discussed into a formal proposal and have that to you by the end of the day. And then you set your next meeting and so on. So when I know what's next and how long each of those steps should take optimally, I can guide someone through that in terms of buying, not in a pushy way, not in a bad way, but in a way that moves something forward to a decision or to someone opting out, rather than letting things just languish and languish much longer than they need to. So this helps the win ratio because I can control the sales cycle when I know what my steps are. All right. So thirdly, your entrepreneur can measure for the first time ever how long it takes to sell, and then how long each distinct stage takes. This is phenomenal business intelligence. Many companies, mature companies even, don't really know how long their sales cycle is, or they have such variance in it that they haven't really been able to determine what the average is. So when they're using a database, there'll be time and date stamps on when an opportunity moves through these various stages, and they'll learn how many days, weeks, months, or even years it takes them to sell, and where something may be getting bogged down, where a step is taking too long, and take action to shrink their sales cycle time. So they can't do anything about their sales cycle until they have some understanding of it. And so that's tremendous power there. And lastly, by understanding what their opportunity stages are, your entrepreneurs will be able to forecast not only upcoming work so that they'll be able to deliver it in terms of orders, in terms of manpower, but they'll also be able to forecast revenue. And so this is proactive planning that's giving them more than just a hunch about what will close, but give them actual intelligence around their sales funnel. This is a graph from Salesforce.com, a screenshot of a sales funnel, and you can see that not only do we have stages here, we have dollar amounts associated with each stage. And so in one quick glance, your core leadership teams will be able to know how much money they have in their pipeline and at what stage, which has each stage has a increasing likelihood of closing. And so again, this all speaks to their ability to forecast and make financial commitments versus just overcommitting to things when they're undercapitalized or being too conservative. So in this funnel, the orange level here at the top, this is that kind of demo or sample provided stage. There's about $1,500 at this in revenue potential at this stage. The next yellow stage is the proposal or price quote out stage. So this business has about $6,500 out in price quotes. And then they have about $2,300 out in the negotiation stage. They've actually won $4,000 of business and lost about $500 worth of business. This is a complete funnel. You can actually choose to have your graph show only open opportunities. And so such a graph would eliminate these closed won and closed lost. But what I can see already is that I have a great deal more opportunities out in that price quote stage. So it makes me wonder if I'm sending out quotes and kind of letting those linger or failing to follow up on those. So just by glancing at the volume, I can determine if that's normal and healthy for my company, or if that's where I have some kind of hiccup in my sales cycle, and where I could potentially drive things forward or make improvements. There's so much more to be explored in terms of a CRM or database. This is just the tip of the iceberg, but I thought it would be helpful to see an actual funnel chart with some dollar amounts. So in closing here, we really bonded as companies that are all supporting entrepreneurs, at this conference, because we know that our entrepreneurs and our startups are such an important part of economic development for our cities and our states and even our nation. And they have our founders have no time, no visibility, often no plan, very little help, virtually no money. And we are involved in bridging them over to a place where they have sales messaging that works, and they have a database that provides them the visibility and the means to really manage their growth. And they have sales steps, a documented process to help them win business and actually stay in business. We know so many young companies fail, I think, because they struggle with all these things on the left, and they seem to not be able to get all the way over, to the right, where they have these things in place to actually be viable. But that's what our work involves, and so we do love entrepreneurs, and when we can help them with any of this, it's our delight. And I appreciate all of you who are joining us in that effort.